Thank you for joining me here once again on Keenan KTV. Let's break down the Jorge Masvidal vs Kamaru Usman rematch fight, and then at the end I will tell you who I will be picking come fight night. So going into this fight immediately, we have to ask ourselves this question. Yes, it is a rematch, but who has to really improve more going into this fight? Without a question, this fighter happens to be Jorge Masvidal. And immediately, one thing that he has already improved in is his preparation. Coming in at just 6 days, it was really not enough to compete against the best of the welterweight division in a 5-round fight. Whatever training he may have done before going into the fight, it was just barely enough to carry him through 5 rounds, but in terms of conditioning and fitness, Jorge Masvidal was definitely not optimal, and that was not the best that we have seen out of him in most of his UFC contests. So immediately Jorge Masvidal has improved in that regard. And so what effect will that play going into the fight? I will tell you guys this much. When the 3rd, 4th, and 5th round comes into play, you will not see Jorge Masvidal be very heavy on his legs and really kind of immediately welcome Kamaru Usman into his pocket range and let him really put him up against the fence and really only focus on defense. Because at that point, the fatigue kicks in and he cannot really think of going in there and really finishing him or knocking him out or just beating him on points. He really has to worry about not getting finished and not getting beaten down. And he pretty much did that for as best as he could going into that fight with Usman the first time around. Masvidal has to stick to a very dominant mindset. He has to go into the fight and he has to stay in the middle of the octagon and he has to back up Kamaru Usman. Now that is a very difficult task, and usually against a wrestler you have to really back up the opponent, otherwise you will be pinned up against the fence and you will get really put into a position where the fight is in a stalemate and there is not really anything happening. So he has to avoid control time and he has to maintain ring generalship. However, Kamaru Usman is a very strong and big fighter. You know, really when it comes to Jorge Masvidal, the man really cuts a minimal amount of weight to make the 170 limit. So going into the first fight, he cut like 20 pounds in a couple of days, and this time around it was only about 6 to 9 pounds. So that is a massive difference. But the real difference lies with Kamaru Usman. Kamaru has to cut down a big amount of weight to make that 170 limit. Jorge Masvidal has made 155 before in the past, so immediately there is a very big difference in physicality. And so that physicality will translate in Kamaru Usman yet again coming down into the middle of the octagon and Jorge Masvidal backing up. Now Jorge Masvidal by nature alone is a very calm and patient fighter, so he will take the outside of the octagon, and as soon as he does that, he will have to really rely on his speed and momentum to carry him and be a step ahead of Kamaru Usman. As much as I have said that he has to stay in the middle of the octagon and back up Kamaru Usman, I simply do not see that happening in this matchup. So what he has to do immediately is rely on being the more mobile and agile fighter and a more speedy fighter. Kamaru Usman, yes, he is bigger and stronger, but he is slower as well. Kamaru also lacks a good amount of head movement and just upper body movement in general. So Masvidal has to utilize all of these advantages going into the fight right away, and he has to establish early round dominance. If he cannot do that, if he cannot win rounds, then I don't see him winning a unanimous decision, because the factor of Kamaru Usman's size and power and physicality weighing down on Masvidal at some point in the fight to where he can get pinned up against the fence and taken down is a very big reality. So I am more certain of that happening than Kamaru Usman getting pieced up every single round. That is just what I believe, because at some point Jorge Masvidal's volume of punches and him connecting flush, it will look clean and all of that, but if it doesn't carry any effectiveness, if it doesn't really carry any significance and power, how can you really earn the respect of Kamaru Usman? It really comes down to really earning that respect and having Kamaru Usman kind of pump the brakes and give you that range and timing and all of that stuff. If you cannot really get that out of Kamaru Usman, then you're going to have a really hard time getting your own game plan going and really get a good striking game going in the fight itself. So then we are met with this. Kamaru Usman comes forward immediately, and then Jorge Masvidal, in my opinion this time around, should come out very fast like he did against Ben Askren, Darren Till, and Nate Diaz, and just immediate rush forward so he can put Kamaru Usman for a second in defense mode, because then he will immediately back up, probably in anticipation of a flying knee or something like that. And when that happens, I believe the fight can go two ways. Kamaru Usman will kind of stay on the outside a little bit, and Jorge Masvidal can go in there, leg kick him, high kick him, pop a few jabs and stay in front of his face and really not commit too much, because he really committed a lot on his punches in the first fight, and that really got him taken down. Now, there's a couple of reasons in my opinion for why he really stuck to those big heavy blows. First of all, he has to understand that in the first fight, he probably was sure of himself that he was not going to be winning all 5 rounds just based on his cardio alone, so he probably really wanted to have Kamaru Usman out of there as soon as possible. So he loaded up on these big overhands and Superman punches, but these really gave up his hips, and Kamaru Usman shot in and took him down. And so it really has to come down to a more strict striking style early on, to where you can stay behind his jab and a leg kick and throw a big right, and just keep his momentum, keep his hips under him, and don't overcommit on his shots. Because Masvidal has the speed advantage, he has lighter feet, but he's also a better striker, so he has to really utilize all of that. And immediately then he will be probably met with Kamaru Usman utilizing his range and size, and he will probably back up Jorge Masvidal once again, not with really his jab, but his front teep kick or just a front kick to the body. The Kamaru Usman, when he utilizes that weapon, it is such a safe weapon, and it is such a range builder that Jorge Masvidal will have no other option but to back up. And as soon as that happens, in my opinion, Jorge Masvidal has to really make the most out of those little moments he has left before Kamaru Usman shoots in and pins him up against the fence, because it is just, in my opinion, inevitable. And if he cannot really make the most out of those openings and connect with a significant strike and hurt and stagger Kamaru Usman, then how can you really expect to gain his respect? Because it really comes down, in my opinion, to earning respect and being the alpha in the ring. If he cannot be that, then I believe that we will have somewhat of a repeat of the first fight. Sure, Kamaru Usman will probably have a harder time taking down and controlling Jorge Masvidal against the fence, because he's going to be fitter and he's going to know what the tactics are of Kamaru Usman. But in general, overall speaking, it is not really going to be taking away much else from that. He may have a harder time trying to get it down, but as long as he has control time and as long as he can stall and halt the tempo of the fight, he's pretty much winning those rounds anyway. So if Kamaru Usman can maintain that, can maintain dominance, and can maintain power shots, he pretty much has enough to win rounds, objectively speaking, and score another points decision win. Now, in my opinion, both fighters will try to outdo their last performances, and a finish will probably be on the horizon for both of them. Now, I don't really see Jorge Masvidal getting knocked out by Kamaru Usman. I think he's too agile, has a great chin, has just too much experience to get put in that situation. So out of the two fighters, if there is a knockout victor, it will most likely be Jorge Masvidal, especially now with that stamina that he has. He can go 5 rounds, and that big knockout spectacle that can always come at any moment is now more present than ever before. So I will have to say that I don't doubt Jorge Masvidal knocking out Kamaru Usman, but I don't see it happening come fight night. And if you're going to be asking me, Keaton, who do you pick come fight night? Who do you think will win? I will have to say that I will be going with Kamaru Usman. Yes, sure. Because if you think about it, Jorge Masvidal will do better than what he did in the first fight. But because he's more active, because he's more willing, I think that this will also inevitably create more openings for Kamaru Usman to shoot him for takedowns, catch legs, or just pin him up against the fence and get the fight to the ground quicker. Usman has size, range, strength, things of that nature, and it is hard to overcome those things, especially when you are the smaller fighter come fight night. Kamaru Usman is going to be slower, he's going to be less skilled in his striking department, so he will really have a hard time getting to Jorge Masvidal this time around, but I think he will find his range and get a decision victory. I wouldn't be surprised if Jorge Masvidal can win 2 rounds against Kamaru Usman, but we will see what will happen come fight night, because in the end, only time will tell what will truly happen. For now, I have been Keenan from Keenan KTV, signing off. Later.